You've probably had this moment before. You wake up, do roughly the same things you've always done, maybe even eat a little better than you used to, and yet something feels off. The energy isn't there, the weight doesn't move, and the system that used to respond now feels strangely unresponsive. So you adjust. You try cutting calories, adding steps, maybe skipping meals. For a few days it looks like it might work, and then it stalls again. Not dramatically, just enough to make you question whether anything you're doing actually matters. That's usually the point where something like CitrusBurn enters the picture. Not as a random product, but as a very specific answer to a very specific frustration. The idea that maybe the problem isn't effort, but a hidden mechanism that stopped responding. The page frames it as thermogenic resistance, a term that sounds clinical enough to feel real, but vague enough to apply to almost anyone. The claim is simple. Your body isn't failing because of age, diet, or discipline, but because a natural fat-burning process has been suppressed. And if that's true, it changes the narrative completely. Because now you're not someone who failed to lose weight. You're someone operating inside a system that no longer behaves the way it used to. That's a powerful shift, and it's not accidental. Most modern supplement marketing doesn't sell ingredients. It sells explanations. It gives you a reason why things stopped working, and more importantly, a reason why you're not at fault. CitrusBurn builds on that by pointing to a specific compound found in Seville orange peel, suggesting it can flip a switch in your metabolism. Combined with ingredients like green tea, apple vinegar, ginger, and berberine, the formula is positioned less like a stimulant and more like a reset mechanism. On the surface, this sounds different from the usual fat burners. No aggressive energy spikes, no harsh stimulants, no crash. Instead, it leans into something quieter, more sustainable. Subtle changes, reduced cravings, steady energy, gradual weight loss. And that's where it becomes interesting because the ingredients themselves aren't new. Green tea has been studied for thermogenesis. Vinegar has been linked to satiety. Capsaicin from peppers can slightly increase calorie burn. Ginger has mild metabolic effects. None of this is revolutionary on its own. But when combined into a single narrative, it creates the impression of a coordinated system working behind the scenes. That's the difference between isolated knowledge and packaged solutions. When you read individual studies, you see small, inconsistent effects. When you see them bundled together, it feels like a designed outcome. And that's not necessarily misleading. It's just structured in a way that emphasizes certainty over variability. Because here's the part that rarely gets said directly. Even if thermogenesis is real, even if these compounds influence metabolism, the magnitude of that effect is usually modest. Not zero, but not transformative on its own. The testimonials, of course, tell a different story. People losing 14, 17, 22 pounds, feeling in control again, waking up with energy. And maybe some of those experiences are real, but they exist inside a context you don't see. When someone starts taking a supplement like this, they're also paying attention again. They're observing their habits, adjusting small behaviors, becoming more consistent. The product becomes a trigger for change, not just a chemical intervention. And that distinction matters because it shifts where the real leverage is. CitrusBurn positions itself as effortless. Burn more, crave less, feel better even while you sleep. And psychologically, that's appealing because it removes friction. It suggests you can bypass the complexity and still get results. But in reality, what it's offering is structure disguised as simplicity. A daily ritual, a sense of direction, a framework that makes change feel automatic. The bonuses reinforce this even more. A detox protocol using common ingredients. A mindset guide focused on cravings and visualization. These aren't random add-ons. They're behavioral systems layered underneath the supplement. Which means the real product isn't just the capsules. It's the combination of expectation, routine, and small physiological nudges working together. And to be fair, that can work. Not in the way the page suggests as a metabolic switch that overrides everything else, but as a low-friction way to re-engage with a process most people have already abandoned multiple times. The trade-off is control. When you rely on a packaged solution, you gain convenience but you lose visibility. You don't fully understand what's doing what. You just know that something seems to be happening. And that's the pattern across most commercial health solutions. They compress complexity into something usable, but in doing so, they also create dependency. Not necessarily in a harmful way, but in a structural one. You're no longer managing your system. You're participating in someone else's version of it. For some people, that's enough. They don't need full control. They just need something that works better than what they were doing before. But if you've been through enough of these cycles, you start to notice something. The pattern repeats. Different product, same promise, similar outcome. Temporary improvement, followed by adaptation. And that's where the deeper question sits. Not whether CitrusBurn works in isolation, but whether it changes your position inside the system, or just gives you a more comfortable version of the same loop. Because real stability doesn't come from finding the right product. It comes from understanding the structure you're operating in, how your metabolism responds, how your habits interact with it, and where the actual leverage points are. Supplements can support that. They can amplify certain signals, reduce friction, make consistency easier. But they don't replace the system. They sit on top of it. So if you're looking at CitrusBurn, the honest answer is this. It's not magic, but it's not useless either. It's a structured intervention built from known components, packaged into a narrative that makes change feel accessible again. Whether that's enough depends less on the formula and more on how you use it. And if you're at that point where things stopped responding and you're trying to figure out why, there's a link below where you can look at how they explain it. Just don't look at it as a solution by itself, look at it as one layer in a system you still need to understand.